At exactly 12:40 in the afternoon, billionaire Lucien Vale sat alone beneath a broken shop awning, wearing a torn gray jacket, worn-out shoes, and a beard he had grown for the strangest experiment of his life. Cars worth more than most houses passed him without slowing down. People looked away. Some covered their noses. Others stepped around him as if poverty were contagious. But Lucien wasn't really homeless. He owned skyscrapers, luxury hotels, private jets, and one of the largest technology companies in the country. He had billions in the bank, yet he had never known whether anyone loved him for who he was or simply for what his money could provide. So that morning, he gave his fortune to his trusted assistant to manage temporarily, left his mansion, and decided to live on the streets as an ordinary homeless man. He wanted to discover one thing money had never been able to buy: genuine love. If you believe kindness and second chances can change someone's life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. You never know whose heart your small act of kindness might reach. For 3 days, Lucien slept beneath the same awning near an old train station. During the day, he watched the city move around him. He saw businessmen throw away half-eaten meals while elderly people searched through garbage bins. He saw children pull their parents closer whenever they passed homeless people. He also discovered something painful about himself: despite having spent his entire life surrounded by people, he had never truly noticed the invisible ones. On the 4th afternoon, while the sun burned against the pavement, Lucien became dizzy from hunger. He had deliberately refused to use his credit cards or contact his staff. He wanted to experience life without privilege, and now he was beginning to understand how frightening that life could be. As he sat with his head against the wall, a young woman carrying a faded canvas bag suddenly stopped in front of him. Her name was Amara Bennett. She worked at a small bakery nearby, earned barely enough to pay rent, and looked exhausted from a long shift. She studied Lucien for a moment before quietly placing a warm loaf of bread beside him. She didn't ask his name. She didn't ask what had happened to him. She simply said that everyone deserved something warm to eat. Lucien stared at the bread as if it were made of gold. He asked her why she would give away food when she clearly didn't have much herself. Amara smiled sadly and explained that her mother had once been homeless after losing her job, and a stranger had given her a blanket during the coldest winter of her life. That stranger disappeared before they could even learn his name. Her mother always told her that kindness was like a candle: even when you had only a little light, you could still use it to help someone else see. Amara walked away before Lucien could respond, leaving him with a warmth that had nothing to do with the bread. For the first time in years, someone had given him something without expecting anything in return. The following days changed everything. Amara began bringing him food whenever she finished work, sometimes saving half her lunch even when she was hungry herself. She found an old blanket and brought it to him. When rain came, she convinced the bakery owner to let Lucien sit inside the back entrance until the storm passed. She never treated him like a charity case. Instead, she talked to him like an ordinary human being. She told him about her dreams of opening a small community bakery where struggling families could get bread without feeling ashamed. Lucien listened, fascinated by the strength hidden behind her tired eyes. He started helping around the bakery, carrying flour sacks and cleaning tables. For the first time, his hands became rough from honest work instead of expensive gym equipment. But Lucien's secret was becoming harder to hide. One afternoon, a black luxury car stopped outside the bakery. His assistant, Gideon Shaw, stepped out carrying an expensive suit and a phone. He had finally tracked Lucien down. Amara watched from inside as Gideon called him by his real name. Her face changed instantly when she realized the homeless man she had been feeding was actually Lucien Vale, the billionaire whose face appeared on magazine covers throughout the city. She felt betrayed. She thought every moment between them had been a lie. When Lucien tried to explain, Amara refused to listen. She told him that she had never cared about his wealth, but she could not understand why he had needed to deceive her to discover that. That night, Lucien returned to the mansion he had once considered paradise, but everything felt empty. His enormous bedroom seemed colder than the pavement where he had slept. He realized his experiment had failed, not because Amara rejected him, but because he had misunderstood the meaning of love. True love was not something you tested by creating a false identity. It was something you earned by becoming honest enough to be vulnerable. The next morning, Lucien sold one of his luxury cars and used the money to create a small emergency fund for homeless families in the neighborhood. He didn't put his name on it. He simply called it the Candle Project. Weeks passed. Amara continued working at the bakery, but she often thought about Lucien. One rainy afternoon, she found an envelope beneath the bakery door. Inside was a photograph of her mother standing beside a stranger from years earlier, the man who had given her the blanket during that freezing winter. Amara's hands began to tremble. On the back of the photograph was a note explaining that Lucien had discovered the man's identity through an old charity record. The stranger had been Lucien's father, who had secretly spent years helping homeless families before his death. Lucien had never known about that part of his father's life. Suddenly, Amara understood why Lucien had been so determined to find kindness. He wasn't simply searching for love. Somewhere deep inside, he had been searching for the goodness his father had left behind. The next morning, Lucien returned to the bakery, not wearing designer clothes or surrounded by bodyguards. He came in wearing simple clothes and stood quietly near the doorway. He didn't ask Amara to forgive him. He simply told her that he had learned something priceless. Money could buy a mansion, but it could never make a person feel at home. Amara looked at him for a long moment and finally said that if he wanted another chance, he would have to earn it honestly, one day at a time. Months later, the Candle Project had helped hundreds of struggling families. Amara's dream bakery opened in a small renovated building, with Lucien investing in it anonymously until she discovered the truth. Above the entrance hung a simple wooden sign that read, "No one eats alone." Lucien never pretended to be homeless again. Instead, he spent his wealth making sure fewer people had to experience homelessness at all. One bright afternoon, Lucien and Amara stood outside the bakery watching a little boy receive his first free loaf of bread. The boy hugged the bread against his chest and smiled. Amara looked at Lucien and whispered that perhaps his strange experiment had not found him a perfect woman after all. It had found him something far greater, a purpose. Lucien smiled and held her hand. He had once believed he needed to hide his fortune to discover who truly loved him. Now he understood that the greatest test of wealth was not finding someone who would love you without money, but becoming someone worthy of love even when money was no longer the most important thing in your life. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to Kindness Corner for more stories that remind us that humanity is worth more than wealth. And before we reach the final moment, comment, "Kindness is the real wealth," if you believe one small act of compassion can change someone's entire life. Because sometimes, the person sitting quietly on the sidewalk isn't looking for money. Sometimes they're simply waiting for someone to look at them and remember that they are human. And sometimes, the greatest love story begins not with a billionaire, a mansion, or $1 million ring, but with a single warm loaf of bread given to a stranger who thought nobody cared. That afternoon, as the sun painted the bakery windows gold, Lucien finally understood the truth he had spent his entire life searching for. He had millions of dollars, but Amara had given him something priceless, the courage to become a better man. And for the first time, he didn't feel like the richest man in the city. He simply felt love.